In this lesson, I want to add some functionality to the date class and talk about one technical issue with creating classes. Let's start by adding some functionality to the class so that we can add a day or month value to the current date to change it. So for example, if we have a class object called today, we could add one day to make it tomorrow, for example. Or we could have a date and add 5 days to it or 7 days to it to make it into a new week, something like that. And we're not going to complete the full functionality of those functions. It'd be beyond the scope of this course, but I'm just going to demonstrate the simple add day and add month functions. So let's get started with those. Both of these are void functions. So we're going to write add day int n for the value we're going to add to the current day. And we'll say day plus equal n. We'll do the same thing for add month. Month plus equal n to add some value to the month. Now let's test those functions. First we'll create a date object. We'll call it today and we'll set it with 3/20/2011. Then let's display the date as it is. Display date. And then add a new line. And then let's add one, or let's add several days. So let's say add day 5. And then we want to look at the date again to make sure that it works. So we'll Control C and Control V to copy that down. Now let's build and run the program. And the first date for today was 3/20/2011. Then when we add 5, it's 3/25. So that worked fine. Let's try the same thing with month. Let's write today, add month 2, and then display today. And so what was 3/25/2011 now becomes 5/25/2011. So the add day and the add month functions work. Now, what if I want to compare two dates? First of all, let me demonstrate something you can do. You can create a new date object and assign it the value of a current date object, just like that. So we're not really calling the constructor, although behind the scenes you are, but we're essentially just saying that we're going to create a new object called tomorrow, and its value will be the same as the values that are in today. We can demonstrate that that's correct by displaying the date for tomorrow. Just to make sure that we know that that works, let's build and run. The last two dates should be the same, and they are. Now, if I wanted to compare these two, let's say that we don't know that they're correct or not correct, and I want to compare them. So let's take this part out. So I want to see if they're equal. Well, I can't write a relational expression like this. I can't write today equals tomorrow, because the equality operator is not defined to work with my user-defined date class. The equality operator is built to work with the built-in data types, but not with my user-defined type. To make it work, I'd have to do something called overload the operator, or also called operator overloading, and that's going to be the subject of the next chapter. So for now, I have to figure out some other way to compare two date objects to see if they're the same, and the solution to that is to write a function that does that. So let's move back to our class definition. And let's start a new one called equals. It's a Boolean function because it's going to return a true or false value. Its parameter is a date object. We'll call it dt. And then the way we compare two dates to see if they're equal is we compare each part of the date. So we'll write if month is equal to dt.month, and because all three pieces have to be the same, day equals dt.day, and year equals dt.year. If that's true, then return true. Else, return false. So again, we have to compare the pieces of a class, the data values, to see if it's the same. We can't perform an aggregate equality check with the equality operator unless we overload it, which we're going to learn how to do in the next chapter. So let's see if this little function works. We'll write if today, I'll tell you what, we'll do it this way. If tomorrow equals today, cout the same day. Well, let's put an indel there. Else cout a different day. Indel. So let's build and run the program. Because we assigned tomorrow to be equal to today in the assignment statement, then they are the same. So let's modify that. Let's write tomorrow add day 1, and then do the comparison. And we see that now it's a different day. Because we haven't learned how to do operator overloading yet, what we have to do is create a function that allows us to compare two dates to see if they're equal. And that's what we do with the equals function. It compares each piece of a date, the month and the day and the year, and if all three are equal, then the two dates are the same. Now the last little thing I want to cover in this lesson is kind of a technical tidbit, if you want to call it that. Let me scroll up here to the get month and get day and get year functions, and notice that I've added in a line const. When you are writing get functions or getter functions as part of your accessor functions, then you should make those functions constant. By doing that, you're ensuring that code written inside the function definition will not modify any of the variable values. Now, of course, I'm not trying to do that in these get functions. I'm just trying to return a value. But in a complex program, that might not be what happens. But by making the function a constant function, then if I tried to write a line of code like so, where the month is incremented before it's returned, the compiler would stop me and say, whoa, you defined this function as a constant, and you're not allowed to modify the values of the variables. So that's just kind of a way to ensure that you get the performance out of your class that you're expecting. And for simple classes, it's probably not all that necessary, but for a complex class, it's always a good idea to define functions that are getters as constant functions. That wraps up the technical material for this chapter on classes, and in the next lesson, we'll start with the exercises.